My name is Alex. I am 32 years old, and one evening not long ago, at my siblings' grand wedding in Napa Valley, I realized I had not been invited as family. I had been summoned as help, a silent figure, meant to stand outside the photographs and hold a crying child. That single moment of recognition, standing in a vineyard where champagne cost more than I earned in a month, still rings in my chest like a church bell struck at midnight. The estate they flaunted that night, the $1 million celebration with silk tablecloths and imported wine, had been built on foundations of neglect. I knew it, but I had hoped foolishly that this wedding might be different. Hope has a way of blinding even the most cautious of us. Perhaps you know what I mean. We tell ourselves, just this once they will see me. Just this once they will remember I am blood too. Yet when the music swells and the guests cheer, you find yourself invisible. Taylor, my sibling, has always been the golden child. Every family has one. I suppose, the one who never waits in line, never pays a bill, never hears the word no. In our house, it was Taylor who received the applause. The borrowed money that was never repaid, the gentle words when mistakes piled up, and it was me, quiet, responsible Alex, who took on the loans, the chores, the role of background character. Parents like to say they love their children equally. In practice, some children glow under the spotlight while others vanish into the wings. I should have known better. For as long as I can remember, my milestones were ignored. When I graduated with a master's degree, I stood alone in a borrowed gown while the rest of my family sent photographs from Florence, celebrating Taylor's 25th birthday with wine beside the Arno River. The message I received that day from my father was brief: "We are proud of you." But family has to prioritize milestones. A birthday, it seemed, outweighed years of study and $85,000 of student loans repaid without a cent of help. Then came the loan that disappeared into smoke. I lent Taylor $20,000. Money scraped from years of saving. Believing in the promise of a neighborhood bar, I thought I was investing in family, in a shared future. Instead, Taylor rolled up in a brand new white Tesla, boasting that it was branding. You wouldn't understand. When I asked about repayment, laughter was the only answer. Laughter and silence. That money is gone to this day. And the house still burns in my memory. Our grandfather's home, appraised at $1 million, should have been shared between us. That is what the will said. Yet I was pushed, really to sign a temporary transfer so that Taylor could manage the property for business. I have not set foot across that threshold since. My name was brushed from the deed as though it had never existed. So yes, I should have known. Yet on the morning of the wedding, when my mother's message arrived, "Bring a nice suit. You will be proud of this family," I let hope rise in me again. I pressed the suit, polished my shoes, and flew across the country believing, or wanting to believe, that I would finally be treated as more than a shadow. The vineyard glittered. Guests in gowns and tuxedos strolled among candlelit tables. Photographers darted like wasps, catching every smile. I held a glass of champagne that tasted faintly of apples and gold. For one heartbeat, I thought perhaps this would be the night of change. Perhaps in one photograph, just one, I would stand beside them as equal. Instead, Taylor pressed a small child into my arms, the baby's face red with crying, the voice sharp with command: "Take them outside, now, and stay out of the ceremony." The music never stopped. The guests never noticed. I walked onto the lawn, the sound of vows echoing faintly from the hall. I stood in the dark, holding a child who was not mine, watching the lights of a celebration that was never meant for me. My glass of champagne sat unfinished on a stone ledge. In that moment, humiliation wrapped itself around my chest tighter than the evening air. People often ask what betrayal feels like. It is not the sudden stab of a knife. It is the slow removal of your name from every list, every invitation, every deed. It is being told, with smiles and laughter, that you are strong enough to manage on your own, which is simply another way of saying, "We will give nothing to you." It is standing in the glow of chandeliers. Yet being asked to wait in the shadows, I felt the old pattern repeating, the same rhythm of neglect, only this time dressed in silk and champagne. And I thought to myself, I should have known Still, a strange calm settled over me. Perhaps that is what age does. I no longer raged. I recorded. I kept the receipts. As people say now, I knew then that this story was not over. Families can erase names from guest lists. But paper, real paper, signed and stamped, has a memory stronger than any toast at a wedding. They believed I would disappear into the night. As I always had, they were wrong. This part matters. Tell me, where are you listening from? Go ahead. Press that button to subscribe. Because we need to talk about families, about money, and about the weight of silence that can last a lifetime. I work nights. That is the easiest way to explain my life. When most of the city sleeps, I walk hospital corridors, check charts, and hold the hands of strangers whose names I sometimes forget by morning. My life is small: rent, bills, meals reheated in the quiet of a kitchen where the clock ticks louder than the refrigerator. On the hook by the door hang 2 keys, one to my apartment, one spare that no one has ever asked for. That spare key has been there for 7 years, untouched. It says more than any speech. I learned long ago that responsibility often feels like solitude. In my family, the spotlight fell elsewhere. Taylor, my sibling, wears the crown of the golden child. From childhood on, Taylor had the praise, the applause, the endless second chances. I was told I was resilient, strong enough to manage. That is another way of saying I was invisible. My mother speaks in plans. She maps out holidays, business ventures, and dreams that somehow always orbit around Taylor. My father speaks in totals. He recites numbers like scripture profit margins, loan amount, appraisal. When he mentions Taylor, the numbers grow large, dazzling. When he mentions me, the figures shrink. Practical. I am reduced to the quiet accountant, the background ledger. At family gatherings, the imbalance was plain. I recall one Christmas, the year Taylor dropped out of college. While the tree glittered, my father raised a glass to our future entrepreneur. Meanwhile, I had just been accepted into graduate school, paying my way with loans that would total $85,000. No one asked about my classes. No one asked about my debt. I learned to sip eggnog in silence. The estate is real. My grandfather's house, brick and oak, valued near $1.5 million, sits on a quiet street with a lake view. That house was meant for both of us, written clearly in his will. But pressure came. Suppled first, then firm sign a temporary transfer. Let Taylor manage the property for the sake of business. I signed. That paper rests somewhere now. Maybe in a lawyer's folder. Maybe in a drawer of my father's desk. I have not seen it since. The risk is simple if I blink. If I miss a deadline or fail to contest, my name may vanish from the record entirely. The stakes rose again last winter. Taxes came due on the property. I discovered, almost by accident, that payments had been shifted under my name. Letters with my address. Invoice I had never authorized. When I asked, the family shrugged. It is easier this way, my mother said. Easier for whom that question still lingered. Patterns of dismissal run deep. Birthdays moved without telling me. Invitations lost in the mail that somehow reached everyone else. Restaurant bills slid my way without discussion. Once, at a family dinner, a waiter placed the check for $230 in the middle of the table. My father tapped it with his finger, pushed it toward me, and said, "You're the responsible one." Taylor laughed, raised a glass, and the moment passed as though natural law had spoken. I carry these memories not as complaints, but as records. A record matters more than feeling. That is something I have come to believe. Feelings can be denied, paper cannot, and so I began to keep copies, emails saved, receipts printed, contracts scanned. In a drawer of my desk lies a folder thick with proof. The envelope on top has a notary stamp, the kind that presses paper into permanence. I touch it sometimes, not to comfort myself, but to remind myself that silence is not the same as absence. There was one boundary I insisted upon: no signatures without me present. We agreed on it after a small argument one spring evening, when papers were nearly filed in my absence. My father nodded. My mother smiled. Taylor rolled eyes but did not object. That boundary was supposed to protect me. I did not yet know how quickly it would be broken. Time leaves clues. The week of my surgery 2 years ago, Taylor posted photographs from a Caribbean island. I lay in recovery, staring at my phone, wondering if anyone would appear at my bedside. No one did. Patterns, you see, are not accidents. They are choices repeated until they harden into truth. So here I am, a night worker with modest means, facing a family that treats me as a ledger line to be erased or replaced. The estate looms large, $1 million. The risk looms larger, losing my right to it through silence or neglect. The evidence sits in my drawer, stamped and sealed, waiting. This part matters. The paper will come into play soon. But for now, all you need to know is this: families remember what suits them. Paper remembers everything. Stay with me. The story does not soften from here. I arrived at the reception hall just before sunset. The vineyard glowed gold. Cameras flashed against the windows. On a long table, place cards marked every guest. My name was not at the family table, nor even near the center. It was tucked beside the kitchen door, a thin card with my name scrawled smaller than the rest. I touched the paper, then left it where it was. Inside, music played. Photographers moved like dancers, weaving among guests with lenses lifted. My mother brushed my sleeve, smiled at the camera, and leaned close. Her words cut through the noise, though her lips barely moved. You do not belong in decisions. The photographer captured her smile as though it were joy. To the lens, it looked like love. To me, it was erasure. People nearby did not react the way one hopes. A bridesmaid glanced down at her shoes. My aunt coughed into her napkin. A groomsman raised his glass and laughed at nothing in particular. The world continued, as though nothing had been said. I held my glass of water. Champagne was not offered at my table. The glass rattled once against the rim, then still. The violation came quickly. Taylor, radiant in silk and light, lifted a manila folder. Without ceremony, it was dropped onto my plate. Inside lay a notice. Red ink across the top. Property taxes overdue. The figure $6,000 stared at me from the page. You will handle the first 3 months, Taylor said, voice pitched to carry just enough. A waiter polished silver beside me. Pretending not to hear, we had agreed, months before, on one rule: no signatures without me present. That rule was broken now. In front of 300 witnesses, hidden only by the noise of music and laughter. The paper on my plate told me everything. They had signed, filed, and shifted without me. My jaw tightened. I did not raise my voice. Anger, in public, is a gift to the one who humiliates you. Instead, I opened my phone. On the screen was a photograph I had taken the week before the same notice. Marked, paid, stamped by the county office at 8:14 in the morning. The proof glowed in my palm. A timestamp is harder to erase than a smile. I caught Taylor's eyes. The smile stayed wide for the guests. But a flicker betrayed recognition. My aunt leaned forward, perhaps curious. The bridesmaid glanced again, then looked away. The paper on my plate, the proof in my hand, two worlds colliding in silence. I slipped the phone back into my pocket. Calm is heavier than rage. It settles deeper. Stadia. Enjoy the night, I said softly, though few heard me. We will keep the paperwork clean. The band struck up another tune. Guests clapped, danced, toasted. I sat for a moment longer, then rose. The notice remained on the plate like a second course no one wished to claim. The folder's edge was sharp. It left a crease across the linen cloth. As I stepped away, I felt the weight of eyes. Some curious, some indifferent. Public humiliation is not always loud. Sometimes it is a smile for the camera and a document slid under your nose. Sometimes it is laughter that skips over you, refusing to break stride. But paper has its own rhythm, and I had kept enough of it to know this story would not end with a notice on a plate. This part matters. Stay close. The next chapter will show why evidence, once gathered, becomes heavier than any insult delivered over dinner. They said the tax was overdue. That was their stage whisper at the reception. Their attempt to paint me as careless. But paper does not bend to whispers. Paper speaks in numbers. Stumps. and seals. Back in my apartment, I laid the folder flat on the table. A lamp cast yellow light across the wood. The envelope on top carried the county seal, pressed deep enough to feel with my thumb. Inside, the receipt told its story without drama. Receipt number Aziptain-904. Paid in full $2,184.73. The stamp showed 8:14 in the morning. Clear black ink across the corner. The parcel number matched the deed. The clerk at the window had slid it back to me with no hesitation. Paid. Logged. Complete. That was what the paper said. The bank gave its echo. Transaction identification 62-91C. Same amount. Same minute. On the screen of my phone glowed a map point 2 blocks from the county assessor's office. I had taken a photograph of the window stamp, the kind that reflects morning light across old glass. 8:14. Again, clocks do not argue. My hands carried ink from the receipt. Faint smudges along the side of my finger. Paper leaves its mark, even when folded away. I slid the document back into its sleeve, smoothed the crease, and wrote the date across a small sticky note. Chain of custody. As the lawyers say, keep it clean. Keep it precise. Still, one proof is not always enough. Families twist. They claim misunderstandings. Misplaced papers. Lost envelope. So I called the clerk's office. The phone rang twice. A voice answered. Calm. Practiced. Her name was Marla. I read the receipt number aloud. She repeated it back without hesitation. Paid on the 15th. She said. System shows clear. Her tone carried no drama. Only procedure. I thanked her. She did not ask why I needed confirmation. The system, to her, was fact. I logged the call. Saved the record. By evening, I had a small stack, the county receipt, the bank confirmation, the photograph with timestamp, the clerk's verification. 4 walls built around one truth: the tax was paid. Yet at the wedding, a folder had been dropped onto my plate, declaring the opposite. Someone needed a story, and they chose me as the villain. The contradiction was clean. Paid on the 15th, marked overdue on the 22nd. Not an accident, not a delay, but a gap wide enough for a falsehood to slip through. I thought of the guests laughing, the photographer catching smile, the bridesmaids raising glasses. None of them would ever see these receipts. They would only remember the moment when Taylor laid a folder in front of me. The whisper of overdue drifting across polished silver. Public memory favors spectacle. Private memory favors paper. I stored everything carefully. The receipt scanned, saved as a PDF. The photograph duplicated in 2 folders. The bank statement printed, sealed in an envelope. I emailed copies to myself under a subject line, simple as airproof. I printed 2 more sets. Placed one in the drawer beneath the spare key. The other I carried in my bag, under a paperclip, next to a pen that still bore ink from the county desk. Silence held my apartment. The refrigerator hummed. The clock ticked. Outside, traffic rolled past in muffled waves. I sat at the table with the folder before me, and I felt the quiet strength of evidence. It does not shout. It waits. Families thrive on noise, on gatherings where voices overlap until the one who protests sounds shrill. But paper, once stamped, never raises its tone. It simply exists. Paid on the 15th. Marked overdue on the 22nd. That contradiction mattered more than any toast raised in my absence. I knew the next step. A meeting was scheduled Tuesday, 9 in the morning. They would read the trust, the deed, the clauses that so far had remained in shadow. I would bring the folder. I would bring the receipt. The story was shifting. They had paraded a falsehood before 300 guests. I carried the quiet proof that would turn their spectacle inside out. This part matters. Stay close. Tuesday at 9 will change the record. And with it, the balance of power. The room was small, lined with dark wood shelves. A desk lamp threw light across a pile of folders. A wall clock ticked with patient certainty. I sat at one side of the table. Across from me, the estate lawyer adjusted his glasses. Beside him stood Marla, the clerk who had confirmed my receipt last week. Her presence was not for drama but for record. Neutral witnesses matter more than family promises. We will read the instrument now, the lawyer said. His voice was plain, not theatrical. He opened a folder, lifted the first page, and laid it flat on the table. Green Family Revocable Trust. He read, dated March 15th, recorded as instrument 2024-11897, 22 pages, raised seal at the lower corner, filed in King County Recorder, Book 412. He placed the page so the seal faced the lamp. The imprint caught the light. Ridges pressed deep into the paper. My finger itched to trace it, but I kept my hands folded. You are named successor trustee. He continued. Title to the residence remains in the trust. No transfer without trustee consent. His eyes flicked toward me. Then back to the text. Calm. Procedural. He turned another page. Clause 12. No encumbrance. Mortgage or lien may be executed by any third party, nor compelled by family vote. Without the trustee's written consent, trigger upon any attempt to alter title while county taxes are current. He paused, lifted his gaze. County taxes are current. I breathed slowly. Paid on the 15th. Marked overdue on the 22nd. That false claim at the wedding sliding a notice onto my plate was nothing but noise. The clause neutralized it completely. No encumbrance without my consent. Taxes paid meant the trigger stood active. The rule was written, stamped, and sealed before any toast had been raised in that vineyard. Marla noted the page count aloud, checked the recording number, and signed a log sheet. Procedure, not drama. That is how truth moves. The lawyer slid 2 certified copies across the table. Notice of interest will be updated at the recorder. He said, escrow holds if anyone tries to move against title. The papers bore fresh blue stamps. It is cool under my fingers. I nodded. Quiet acknowledgement felt heavier than any speech. The law did not require my anger. Only my presence. For a long moment, no one spoke. The clock ticked on the wall. The lamp hummed faintly. Outside, traffic rolled by. Indifferent to the fact that a clause written years ago had just shifted the balance of inheritance. Families like to tell stories in rooms filled with laughter, photographs, and toasts. But here, in this small office with its lamp and clock, the real story settled. The trust spoke louder than any voice raised at a reception. I thought back to the vineyard, to the folder dropped on my plate. Guests had laughed, cameras had flashed. Humiliation had felt sharp, immediate. But humiliation fades. A trust recorded at the county office does not. The lawyer closed the folder, stacked the copies neatly, and capped his pen. That concludes the reading, he said. Neutral words. But the effect was anything but neutral. I gathered my copies, slid them into my own folder. The seal pressed against the paper like a quiet heartbeat. Cool edges beneath my palm reminded me this was not a gift, not charity. It was the record of a man who had written my name deliberately. My grandfather ensuring balance where my parents had failed. I stood, nodded once to Marla, once to the lawyer. Thank you, I said. My voice did not rise. It did not need to. The paper spoke. As I left the room, the hallway felt brighter, as though some weight had shifted. Outside, the air smelled of rain. I carried the folder tight against my side, the seal imprinting through the thin fabric of my jacket. This part matters. Next will not be an office or a clerk's desk. Next will be the dining room table. The confrontation face to face. The clause has been read. The choice must now be offered. We met in the dining room of my parents' house. The table was long, polished walnut, set with china that rarely saw daylight. A folder lay at my side, edges sharp against my wrist. Marla, the clerk, stood near the doorway with a notepad. Her presence ensured no word would slip into myth. Taylor arrived first. Still glowing from the wedding's aftertaste, though the makeup had faded, my mother hovered near the china cabinet, rearranging plates that needed no arranging. My father took his chair at the head, his face a mask of neutrality. Taylor went straight to the point. You can sign a temporary consent. They said, we will refinance, fix the tax mess, and keep the house safe. A pen clicked twice between their fingers. The sound echoed in the quiet room. I let the silence hold. The pen clicked again. I folded my hands, felt the cool edge of paper beneath them. We set a rule. I said it last. No signatures without me present. I opened the folder. The certified copies slid across the table, on it toward Taylor, one toward my father. Green Family Revocable Trust. Clause 12. The raised seals caught the overhead light, small ridges gleaming like coins. No encumbrance. No mortgage. No lien. Without trustee consent, trigger taxes current. Taxes are current. I did not raise my voice. The words were not mine. They belonged to the document. Taylor's smile faltered. My mother's hands stilled against the china. My father cleared his throat but said nothing. I placed a second sheet atop the copies. Option A. You withdraw the refinance request. You return the spare keys. You confirm by Tuesday at 5 in the afternoon that no applications remain pending. Do that, and we are finished. I lifted another page, slid it beside the first. Option B. I place an escrow hold on any transfer. I file notice at the recorder. I attach last week's receipts. The system will close every door you try to open. We will proceed in writing. The clock in the hallway ticked loud. No one moved to touch the papers. Taylor's pen clicked once more, then stopped. My mother whispered, "You are making this ugly." I shook my head. "No, we are keeping it clean." I gathered the spare copy, left the certified ones where they lay. "Here is your copy." I said to Taylor, "Here is yours." To my father, Marla wrote the minute into her notepad. Neutral hands keep true records. The china glittered, untouched. The folder closed with a soft thud. My thumb traced the edge, cool under the skin. I rose. "The clock starts now," I said. My voice did not rise. It did not need to. The document spoke louder than any argument. I left the dining room, folder under my arm. The hallway light dimmer than the one in the office where this had begun. Outside, evening air carried the scent of pine. My breath felt steady. This part matters. The deadline has been set, Tuesday at 5. The next chapter is not negotiation. Butin forcément. Tuesday arrived. The clock on my wall marked 5 in the afternoon. The inbox badge on my phone remained at 1. No message. No confirmation. The deadline had passed. Silence is its own kind of decision. I took the folder from the drawer and opened it flat. The envelope on top bore the county seal. Beneath it rested the certified copies of the trust. Cool paper edges met my palm as I gathered the stack. By 9 the next morning, I stood at the clerk's counter, the stamp pressed blue into the page. Crisp and final. Recorded as Instrument 2024-11941. Book 412. Page 77. Time of record, 10:08 in the morning. A neutral officer slid the document back across the desk. Ink stillvet. Edges cool. I logged the number in the margin of my notebook. The next step was clean. Notice of interest filed, escrow hold attached. Any attempt to move title now froze automatically. The system carried out what words could not. At the same counter, I handed over a packet of receipts. Each page bore stamps, signatures, dates, proof layered on proof until the story stood beyond doubt. I walked 2 blocks to the municipal office. There, another clerk entered a line. Incident P-734218. Key retention. Documentation of refusal. Neutral hands again. Writing what needed to be written. By afternoon, the system began to move. First came an email from the lender. Application withdrawn at borrower request. On the portal, the refinance tile faded to gray, locked from further action. Next came the bank, a reversal posted, identification CR-66M21. Amount credited $89 in fees. The ledger balanced, cool and impartial. Marla phoned from her desk at 10:12. Received and logged, she said. Her voice carried no triumph, only record. I wrote the minute in the margin of my notebook. Costs aligned where they belong. Courier fee $18.95. Certified copies $12. Receipts stapled, folded, stored. totals that no argument could erase. That afternoon, the listing for my grandfather's house disappeared from the real estate site. No transfer. No access. No sale. The photograph of the front porch, once posted online, faded into a blank square. Paper had closed the door that conversation could not. 2 days later, a padded envelope arrived at my apartment mailbox. Inside lay the spare keys. Returned without note. The metal was cool in my palm. I logged the time. The date. The envelope number. Evidence of compliance. Though late, I placed the keys in the drawer beneath the blue folder, closed it softly, and sat for a long moment in the quiet. The apartment hummed around me. Refrigerator. Clock. Fine street noise. No applause. No spectacle. Only the calm rhythm of a system doing what it was built to do. Enforcement is not anger. It is not shouting across a table or slamming a door. Enforcement is a line entered in a book, a stamp pressed into paper, a number logged in a margin. Families tell stories with laughter and accusation. The system tells stories with ink and time. They had laughed at the wedding. They had called me nothing. Moved my seat to the corner. Slid a false notice across my plate. But laughter fades. Ink dries. The record holds. I closed the drawer and leaned back. The room felt lighter. My grandfather's house still stood. Title intact. Trust enforced. Taylor would not sell, mortgage, or encumber it without my hand. My parents could not erase my name from the record. The estate remained. Not because they accepted me, but because the law required them to. We will stay on paper. That is the record. This part matters. Next comes reflection, not about revenge, but about what remains when the dust settles. The apartment is quiet again. The drawer is shut. The folder inside. The keys resting in their padded envelope. The house is safe. The listing is gone. Yet life is still what it was. I work nights. I reheat meals. Bills sit in neat stacks. Filed by date. Some things change. Some things do not. We kept one rule: no signatures without me present. That line, written in haste one evening, turned out to be the lifeline. A single sentence can protect more than speeches filled with promises. The trust carried the rest. Clause 12. Stamped and sealed. Stood when no one else did. Family voices may bend, but the paper did not. My grandfather, gone now, spoke louder through that trust than my parents ever did in life. It is a strange thing when love arrives in the form of a clause. Strain, but steady. I think of Marla at the clerk's desk, her calm voice reading numbers back to me. I think of the lender's representative, logging application withdrawn without comment. I think of the recorder's stamp pressed into blue ink. These small hands, neutral and procedural, held more weight than years of family dinners where my chair was pushed to the side. The moral is not complicated. Boundaries save time. Record cut noise. Calm wins. Those truths may not sparkle like champagne, but they hold when the music stops. People ask why I did not raise my voice. Why I did not storm out of that vineyard or slam a door in the dining room. Anger feels powerful, but it fades. Paper does not. Now I sit here, wondering what you would have done. Would you have called first? Would you have filed? Or would you have walked away? Deciding the fight was not worth it. I chose the ledger. Perhaps you would choose differently. Tell me below. Tap subscribe. Leave your comment. And come back this weekend for another story. Families and money. Love and silence. They twist together more often than we admit. The details have been changed. This channel is not legal advice. But the lesson is clear: we keep it clean. We keep it on paper. And we keep moving forward. We will keep it clean.